Romancing Saga Minstrel Song International. Square Enix have long been the leaders in the JRPG markets, but the Saga series is one of the least well-known series in their arsenal, particularly when it comes to Western audiences. But now, with the remaster launching a few years back, and finally, as of the 9th of December, the game is available not just in the West with English localization, no, this time it will also have Spanish, German, and Italian subtitles, hence the additional titling International, to really solidify the fact and opening up the experience to a larger demographic of people within the continent. But let's see if you should give the game a chance. This game starts off giving you the choice of 8 different characters, from a crystal pirate, a traveling entertainer, a nomad, and nobility. This can feel overwhelming, but this map they provide breaks it down the best. They're all given a star rating from 1 to 5, with 1 being it's easy to just jump into play, all the way to 5, which is I want punishment just to feel something category. Still probably a little bit tame for the average Soulsborne player though, but it's the best they got. All the characters have access to a different starting area, with each starting in their own distinct section as outlined in the map. And as you add people to the party and meet more people along the way, you will get access to more areas across the world, more different villages, more different towns, to help hopefully progress you on the quest lines. Now, while some characters have a more traditional RPG approach to the story in the early games, like Albert the Noble, who gets railroaded through the early section of the plot. And conveniently, he's also the character with the lowest number of stars, so the prime target for your first playthrough. It's also who I played in my first playthrough. And bless him, he really did have a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. But at least he has fairy wings. No mummy or daddy anymore, but look, he's a fairy! Wow! It's a very different design from the original game, but I'm kind of here for it, you know? You also have Aisha the Talarian, who is a nomad, who likes horses. Her story literally starts like that, and then she gets beaten up but saved by Budget Sephiroth. But good. It also turns out he's the prince, but I can't help the fact he looks like Sephiroth, right? I can't help it. But then she gets kidnapped to be made into a slave. Yeah. She's also one of the hardest starters, according to our nifty map. I actually did try her out to solidify that, and she is just made of glass, and not in a glass cannon way either. No. The non-fun kind of glass. We also have Claudia, who is an orphan who was raised in the woods, who gets a fairly interesting plot line. She leaves the forest, discovers her past, and actually gets a unique quest line later in the story, something that most of the characters don't have the luxury of. But at the end of the introduction, she actually gets to join forces with another one of the playable characters, Grey. Grey is kind of the traditional protagonist from the time, enigmatic, amnesiac, but with a sense of style emos can't help falling in love with. Damn, he's dreamy. We also have Sif, a Valhallan warrior, who gets sent on a legit quest and a reason for leaving the starting place in the first place. We finally found one. For most of the characters, they kind of just end up reaching a natural end of a kind of vague quest line at the start before they kind of just get left to their own devices. Sif's quest is all about restoring a dragon's eye, but don't worry, you're also going to go fight Saruin. That just comes later. The last 3 characters we have are Jamil the Thief, who also rescues Aisha in her interaction, and Hawk, who is a famous pirate and gets one of the most engaged openings. And it's certainly a fun questline, but definitely not something I recommend for a first playthrough. If that's the first character you're going to play as, I highly recommend you at least know the mechanics and how the game works. You also have Barbara, who is a traveling entertainer, and I kind of forgot her reasoning for doing the quest. I got distracted. I'm not sure why. There's no reason. None at all. The only other character really worth mentioning is the Minstrel, who is in every pub you visit. He might have a problem, but his stories are good, so we'll just continue to act as his enablers. He'll tell you stories and can actually be recruited if you want him in the party. You just have to continuously pester him. The major downside is these characters don't get an awful lot of screen time to really show off their personalities throughout the game. And if you don't pick them, then even if you do recruit them later on, or one of the many other recruitable characters, they sadly don't dig too deep into any of the character stories, and that is a massive shame. because these characters actually do have an incredibly interesting interactions in the small moments that you get to show them. Then the most likely reason for all of this is probably due to the limitations of the SNES when it first came out, with its sheer amount of locations and the characters. Giving each unique dialogue for every single quest might just have been too much for the system at the time. Now, the gameplay is very much what you'd expect from a turn-based RPG. While the amount of weapons you could equip at once is slightly higher, 4 in total, and that can be 1 sword, 1 bow, some kind of like smoke bomb, that kind of stuff. Magic is not included in those 4 though. So it does allow for an awful lot of more versatile approaches, especially if you work on adding some magic into your party. While the menus and the interfaces could be considered a little clunky, because of the pictograms on them, they're actually extremely easy to read and understand, so that's a major bonus, but it does feel like your screen is overloaded with menus. An added difference in this game is the proficiency system, which you could acquire from a shifty-looking man found in almost every single town, who will happily teach you these things, and some new classes. If you have some precious jewels, you'll often meet him in a back alley. Is this just their world's equivalent of a drug deal? Your party's max capacity is actually 5 different people, which is oddly high for RPGs. Most tend to stick with 4 max, although other games in this kind of area, like the early Persona series, actually also had 5, so it wasn't completely unheard of in the 90s for this to happen, but it now feels a little bit jarring to see. Another thing you'd have to get used to is healing. In most RPGs, you take a couple of hits, you beat the battle, and then you have to heal up outside the battle, otherwise your HP is reduced for the next fight. But no, not in this RPG. They decided to take a slightly different approach, which feels like the series' slogan at this point. They just really wanted to be different. After a battle, if your character has taken damage, they'll just go straight back to full health. Frankly,
'tis but a scratch.
But you do have 2 new point meters to keep an eye on, namely LP, which is just life points. Each character has a set number of these, and every time you die, it goes down. Now, some enemies' attacks can actually take multiple LP off you, and some enemies will attack you when you're downed and take more LP. So the lower your total LP, the more stress can be encountered. Also, some proficiencies can use LP if you run out of proficiency uses, but if your LP hits 0, then it's time to scour some pubs for a replacement party member, or save scum. Both are the legit strategies. I won't judge, I promise you. There's also things like DP or durability points. It's just weapon durability. Certain abilities will cause this to drop, and if you overexpend DP, your weapon will become unusable until you go to an inn or a blacksmith and have them take a nice hard look at it. So don't be smashing every enemy with your hardest hits. You'll be lucky to live long enough to regret it. A major selling point for this game is the lack of random encounters, which, considering this version of the game is from 2005, it's pretty ahead of its time. But due to another one of the main mechanics of the game, the lack of random encounters is actually really helpful. I'm on about event rank, something the game actually never really addresses. And in the original, you couldn't be worked out without talking to one of these entitled little shits. Constantly belittle you for being a rookie adventurer. What do they even know? They can't even enter the pubs. I do wish that dialogue changed as the event rank went up. But nonetheless, here we are. In the original, it was best to tell, based on the dialogue options they offered, of how far your event rank had progressed. But the remake made this slightly easier to attain. It used a world clock. As your event rank goes up, the clock ticks on, and new quests open, and others close. And for 1992, when the game first came out, that was some insane stuff. Other games have since taken that approach. Square Enix even tried that in their more mainline series, like Final Fantasy with Lightning Returns. The major downside, though, with event rank is it's purely based on fights you've won, not quests. So you could technically max out your event rank before you've even finished the character introduction section. And based on my playthrough, I was rank 11 by the time I ended Albert's introduction, which might not be accurate because Albert is the most in line with traditional JRPGs and is longer due to that. But because of this, I did miss out on a small number of quest lines that close up during the early ranks. Now, there's no guarantee I'd have found those anyway, because they're all scattered across the map. I missed out on the opportunity to find those. Now, while each individual character will start off their journey very differently, with a different length introduction into the world, the quests they go on against Sabruin is pretty much the same after these initial steps. Most of the introductions really just introduce us to that small corner of the world, where we finally get the reins taken off us, and in some cases, the reins come off after mere seconds. Others, like Albert, yes, are more stretched out. Now, the thing that annoyed me is finding quest lines isn't as easy as I'd like. Although, as you get yourself into a few, it becomes very much like buses. Once you get one, another comes along at the same time. And sometimes characters will jump scare you with random, unprovoked conversation. The scariest kind of jump scare. It's all in the name of quests. Quests, all in the name of quests. And while some of the quest lines have an interesting tidbit to them, from going to have a small chat with a god to stopping a pirate invasion, some felt more like go to dungeons and hid things. Well, they can't all be winners, can they? For a game built so heavily around side quests, it certainly felt like they could have been more connected. I know this game was from the 90s, and it was doing something different, and honestly, I did miss out on a lot of quest lines due to my event rank at the end of Albert's introduction, and honestly, they're very difficult to find, and you're only going to find a certain selection of them before they ultimately time out. It's certainly a game that will benefit from multiple playthroughs and using all of the different characters, so you get to see different viewpoints from different factions and all the statuses across the world. Although Sabruin just randomly getting name drops in some quests and no real direction after introductions is actually quite jarring, and that transition could have been a lot smoother. And the main issue I've got with that bit is the characters don't seem to have any major motivation to take on any of these quests, let alone taking on Sabruin at all. It just kind of felt shoehorned in. But my overall experience of the game is that I actually really love this non-linear approach. It was something different, it was something unique, and I feel like it's something that we could often do a lot more of. And considering the time this game came out, you can give it a lot of leeway for some of its more aged moments. But overall, this is a fun game. Then, yes, it's probably not for everyone due to the sheer lack of hand-holding it does. And some people may actually prefer playing the game with a wikia open. At the same time, it's certainly a wikia kind of game, but it's certainly more of a hardcore JRPG fan game as well. So you can kind of find both of those in there. Personally, I'll probably be checking out the rest of the games in the series as well to see how the series evolved from this one. I know Romancing Saga 2 was all about running a kingdom. I think I'd be a just ruler. I definitely wouldn't turn into a dictatorship. I'd look good, though, with my dictatorship portrait, though, right? But don't forget to like, comment down below if you check this game out, and most importantly, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to hang out with me live, I'm live over on Twitch 4 nights a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday, at _UntitledGamer. So come on and check me out over there. Links all down below. But for now, I think I'm going to go have some Christmas drinks. Yeah. See you in the next one.